Hi, my name is Jacie. In April of 2022, I was diagnosed with CIRS, aka chronic inflammatory response syndrome, aka mold illness, aka biotoxin illness. Since then, I've learned a lot. I read the actual textbook, I've done a ton of research, so while I'm not a provider, I am an experienced patient, and my hope today is to teach you a little bit about biotoxins. CIRS happens when someone who is genetically predisposed to being really bad at eliminating a biotoxin encounters that biotoxin. If you haven't seen my other CIRS videos, I recommend you go check them out. I have one that is about what is CIRS and another one about the diagnostic process that may give you better context for this video. Part of the diagnostic process is getting blood drawn. Half of the blood draw is for genetic testing to see what haplotypes you have that will indicate which biotoxins you're sensitive to. It appears that about 25% of the population have the haplotypes that would make them susceptible to some sort of biotoxin illness. They're still discovering more and more biotoxins, but the most common one is mold. In the United States, the Environmental Protection Agency says that 50% of buildings are water damaged. Combine that with 25% of the population possibly having a mold susceptibility gene, and you're looking at about 4 million people in the US. Another really common one is Lyme disease, which people can get from tick bites. There are also more obscure ones like spider bites from a brown recluse spider, algae, bacteria, Gardasil, and other vaccines. And more recently, there has been a lot of research about biotoxin illness and long COVID or post-COVID syndrome. There's also a multi-susceptibility haplotype. It basically means that you're susceptible to all of the biotoxins. So when we're talking about chronic inflammatory response syndrome, there is a clinically proven protocol that you can use for treatment. It's called the Shoemaker protocol. The first part of that protocol is removing the exposure. So in the case of mold, that can look like remediating your home of the mold or moving away from your environment. Personally, I was in a moldy environment, but I was in a situation where I could pick up and leave. For people who have Lyme as their biotoxin, it may be really important to treat the Lyme first.
Hey, it's Editing Jacie here. I wanted to give a quick word on the next step of the Shoemaker protocol. The first step is to remove exposure. The second step is to start taking biotoxin binders. Biotoxin binders are very specifically charged and they have specific receptor cell sites to grab onto the biotoxins and help you eliminate them. Unfortunately, generic binders like charcoal and clay won't work. They may make you feel better because they're helping you detoxify other junk from your body, but very specifically, the biotoxin binders have to be charged correctly and have to have the correct receptor site. Typically, cholestyramine is the gold standard for the biotoxin binders, but you can also take Welchol. Now, cholestyramine is the gold standard. It has the most receptor sites. Welchol has about 25% of the receptor sites that cholestyramine does, and then if you don't tolerate either of those well, you can actually use a supplemental approach. This is not ideal. They are very high in oxalates, but for people who don't tolerate the binders well, for whatever reason they're reacting to them, it can be helpful to ramp up from there.
The severity or type of symptoms that a CIRS patient is experiencing can be dependent upon which biotoxin they were exposed to. It can also depend on the length and severity of exposure. Especially if mold is your biotoxin, different types of mold can manifest as different symptoms. In addition to CIRS symptoms, biotoxin illness can wreak havoc on the transcriptome, which is basically how your RNA manifests within your body. It can turn on errant genes, triggering things like autoimmune conditions. For me personally, it triggered something called ankylosing spondylitis, which is a type of spondyloarthropathy, but it's also very common to trigger any other autoimmune illness, everything from ulcerative colitis to psoriasis. In my last video, I said I would expand upon the biotoxin pathway, so I'll go ahead and pop up an image here so that we can discuss. When a biotoxin enters the body, even if you don't have CIRS genes, it does impair nerve cell function. For people that don't have CIRS genes, their body naturally detoxes and eliminates these biotoxins from their body. If you do have CIRS genes, biotoxins can trigger an immune response, releasing inflammatory proteins called cytokines into your body. This can impact your capillaries, as cytokines attract white blood cells and they kind of clog up the tiny capillaries in your body. So this can cause things like shortness of breath, fatigue, muscle cramps, and the reduced ability to see blurred lines. Biotoxins will also trigger complement activity. Complements typically help the body eliminate biotoxins, but because people with CIRS can't actually identify the biotoxins, the complement activity just keeps circulating through their bloodstream. Cytokines also damage leptin receptors in the brain, leading to stubborn weight gain and also lowered production of something called MSH. MSH is melanocyte stimulating hormone, and it has a role in a lot of different areas of your body, causing a lot of different downstream impacts. For example, sleep disturbances. Melatonin production is reduced, causing non-restorative sleep. Production of endorphins is reduced, leading to weird chronic pain. MSH also regulates the tight junctions in the gut, which can lead to GI disturbances. It can look like leaky gut or even celiac disease. As the white blood cells lose control of the cytokines, other immune responses can be dysregulated, meaning you are more likely to have co-infections or to become ill. Stress hormones are initially elevated, causing damage to the body, but then drop dangerously low as the body tries to protect itself. Reduced MSH lowers production of sex hormones, leading to lowered libido and irregular menstrual cycles. Reduced antidiuretic hormone production leads to frequent urination, irregular thirst, and static shocks. As the immune system responds to the biotoxin, it can trigger a lot of inappropriate immune responses. These can impact digestion and blood clotting. Many people with CIRS also experience staph infections that can further aggravate the immune response. High levels of inflammation cause a flu-like response, things like headache, fatigue, muscle soreness, and poor temperature control. While biotoxin illness can wreak havoc on the body, there is hope. Personally, I did the Shoemaker protocol. I'm about halfway through it and I'm feeling 1,000,000% better. In January of 2022, I could hardly walk, and yesterday I ran a mile for the first time in a year and a half. If you think you may have or you do have chronic inflammatory response syndrome, I know how overwhelming it can seem, especially when you're first getting started into the realm of CIRS. And my friend Barbara and I created a group called the CIRS group. It's a supportive community of people who are healing from CIRS, so if you need additional support or resources, I'll go ahead and leave a link to our group in the description box down below. I hope you found this video helpful. If you or someone you love is healing from CIRS, I just wish you so much love and peace and healing through this time. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Okay, bye.